What is up, everybody? How are we doing? We're gonna.
What's up? What's up?
Kev always tells me I'm not allowed to talk in the beginning. We've got to get right into it because it messes something up. But I think you got to wait. I think there's benefits to waiting and letting some people file in. Look, 10 eyeballs on us already. That's the kind of reach we've got. 10. Well, I guess it's 20 eyeballs because there's 10 people. Everybody's got 2. I'm assuming anyway. If not, if you're showing up expecting Trey Rowland, I think he's in New Orleans brokering like some big Dorito and ball trimmer deal right now. Not quite sure.
If we get him back alive, we'll be stoked.
Yeah, that's how I kind of feel about it. He's really sad because he lost to me. He swore Roman Reigns was going to lose. I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Okay. We're already talking about wrestling.
Sorry, man. It's WrestleMania season. What's up, everybody? All right. You're here for recruiting news. You're here for recruiting action. And based on his little title there, I think we've got a recruiting analyst in Mr. Zach Blostein. Zach, was kind of a big weekend this weekend. We're going to get into the top 10. But it was kind of a big weekend for FSU recruiting this weekend, right? I mean, some stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, Florida State hosted their second spring scrimmage this past Saturday. And it was definitely a bigger recruiting weekend than what they hosted surrounding their first spring scrimmage 2 weeks ago, which is an encouraging sign. They brought a ton of talent to campus. We talked about it on the earlier podcast, but a few names of note: 5-star receiver Jamie French in the 2025 class, 4-star edge in 2024 Booker Pickett, 4-star offensive lineman Nair Daniels. Those are just a few. And then obviously Florida State's newest commitment, 2025 quarterback Trevor Jones, who you guys, or Kev, broke down his film on the YouTube channel already. You guys can go check that out. But so it was an eventful weekend in Tallahassee for sure.
Yeah, so that's a great little lob there for me. So I bring it up because you and Brendan recorded a pod earlier. You can find it on the Knowles 24/7 YouTube channel or on the podcast, the Knowles 24 on the Bench podcast feed, wherever you may get those from. Please be sure to go check that out for the latest and greatest intel from this past weekend. Also, Knowles 24/7 message board. Get over there, get signed up if you're not signed up already. I've got to do all my pitches here early. Get them out of the way. Make sure you like this video and are subscribing if you're not subscribed already. But I'm assuming if you're here at this point, you're Noti Gang and you are probably subbed. Kev broke down Trevor Jones Jr.'s film on the Knowles 24/7 YouTube channel. Kev, I want you to give me a brief synopsis of that for the people so they will then go click and check on that.
Yeah, so I mispronounced his name just to give a little bit of a warning, but Trevor Jones, he's kind of on the shorter side. He's a 6 foot tall, 185-pound quarterback out of Jacksonville, Mandarin High School, I believe. He's got a lot of athleticism, but I think what you see out of that athleticism is kind of a maturity. So he's not just running to run. They're not doing a lot of designed runs. Oftentimes what you're seeing is escapability in pocket to try to release the ball downfield. And I think he does a good job with that. And I think that's something that oftentimes when kids get to the college game, they have to learn that particular part of being a quarterback. And I don't think he has to. I think where he's at is developing him as a kind of dual threat quarterback appropriately. He definitely has athleticism. I think he's got an all right foundational base mechanically, something that you can work with. I comped him to Jordan Travis in the video. I think that's an aspirational comparison, but if you look at their high school tapes 1-to-1, I think you'll see a lot of similarities, right? They have a very similar build, 6 foot, 180-ish pounds, have that escapability. I think JT's a little bit twitchier where Jones might be a little bit more of a straight line speed guy. But very similar strengths and weaknesses. I think that maybe if there's a complaint there is that arm strength, but he is just a sophomore in high school, and you see things like that change all the time. So yeah, I thought it was a really interesting take, just in the sense of what it says about Mike Norvell and what they're looking for at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Got to watch this film a little bit over the weekend after the video was done. Yeah, there's a lot to like there. I think he's got to unlock the hips a little bit, and that's going to help him generate a little bit more power on his throws, a little more strength, arm strength. That's stuff that's going to come as he works on developing his game with different quarterback coaches in the offseason and just develops himself as a football player. I don't know what the hell Rashard Stapleton is doing right now in the chat. He is talking about anything and everything right now. Rashard, lock it in. All right. We're here to talk top 10. Get it together, my man. Get it together.
Hey,
I don't know
showing
what you
love.
got going on. So everybody's here because they want to talk about Florida State's top 10 most wanted recruits. As always, Zach is dropping this periodically throughout the different recruiting seasons. We were able to break down the pre-spring one. That was probably back in January. So here we are in April 3rd. Zach texted me last night. Yo, we're going to drop the top 10. Let's jump on YouTube, break this thing down. We're going to watch a little bit of film, maybe a little bit of different format than what we have done in the past. We're going to talk about the top 10. And then because there's so much depth to this class right now and guys that they're recruiting, we're going to look at some of the honorable mention guys and really try to give a sense of how well the staff is developing as recruiters. They're not just recruiting 5, 6, 7 guys like we've seen in the past. They've got 10, almost 20 guys that are elite caliber football players that they're recruiting, and they're, kind of in the game for, right?
Definitely. It was a tough list to make. I think that was the first message I posted on the Noles 24/7 message board after posting the story, was like, this is an extremely hard thing to do because of all the realistically top targets for Florida State in the 2024 class. I mean, they've got a multitude of guys that you feel like maybe they lead for at multiple different positions. So it's definitely a hard list to make, but I think that the group that I came up with of 10 is definitely a good group, and all talented guys in their own right. And we weigh different factors. When I come up with this list, I weigh obviously how much interest these prospects have in Florida State, the level of interest Florida State is showing them, and then just the overall talent of these individual players, and that all mixes together, and that's how the list is made. So you see, like, this is definitely a list made up of a lot of defensive linemen, because I think that's a position, especially on the interior, that FSU's doing pretty well at recruiting, and it's a big position of need, because they have multiple guys on the roster that are very likely going pro after this upcoming season, and they're going to need to fill in the gaps a little bit, more so for the future, especially on the interior. But I think that's why you see a lot of interior defensive line prospects on the list this go around.
Yeah. And I think these lists do a good job of reflecting like what's important in football: offensive line, defensive line, wide receivers, quarterbacks. Yes, Kev, I said offensive and defensive line first.
Well, the first one you noted was offensive line.
They are the most valuable positions in football.
Okay.
They are the true athletes of the game.
Is that why everybody
most
always
intelligent
chooses,
people would say,
a defensive lineman for number 1 pick in the draft?
But you see that they reflect what's important in football anymore. Yeah. There's a reason you're not going to find a lot of running backs, a lot of linebackers on these lists. They're just not super valuable positions in the game. They're certainly important. Not going to say that they're not, but when it comes to winning football games, you win with good corners, good receivers, good quarterbacks, and good line play. That's kind of just where it is all going these days. Kev, I've got to ask you specifically, how excited are you to be here to talk about recruiting? Because you are, I'm not sure I've met anybody that's as excited about recruiting as you are.
I follow it religiously. Don't get me wrong. No, I'm excited to watch football. That's what I'm excited about. You're going to throw up some clips here in a second, and that's where I get excited, is to watch some football. I don't know half these kids' names. I just like to watch them play football.
I'm just hoping I don't screw their names up. All right. The top 10 is scrolling across the bottom. Zach, let's get into it. Number 10, Kamarion Franklin, a defensive end out of Mississippi. I don't want to say that wrong because he is not being recruited as a defensive tackle, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's FSU's pitch to him, is he can come in as a defensive end. That's something that he wants to do. So that's playing in their favor in that recruitment. But yeah, I mean, he's in the heart of SEC country, I guess, in Mississippi. The number one prospect in the state of Mississippi for this class, and he was on campus in March for Legacy Weekend. FSU's done a good job recruiting him so far. They've hosted him multiple times over the last year. And then the next step is just kind of working on that official visit. He's visited a ton of places this spring. Miami and Tennessee seem to me as the biggest competition for him right now. And then obviously you look at the in-state schools, more so Ole Miss than Mississippi State. He was actually there today visiting Ole Miss. I was told, or I've been told in the past that, Ole Miss and the in-state schools in general just aren't a huge factor for him. But we know how these recruitments usually go. So always want to keep an eye on the in-state schools for any Mississippi kid. And I think, we'll kind of see how his official visit schedule lines up. But I think FSU is in line for one, and they're going to be working on locking that down over the next couple of weeks.
I find it interesting that 2 Florida schools are involved there. You said Miami and Florida State are both considered to be 2 of the bigger threats in his recruitment. I find that rather interesting. Also, 2 that maybe have strong NIL game. Just curious things to hear. Number 9, another defensive lineman, another defensive end, maybe could project to a 3-tech down the line in LJ McRae. McRae's out of Daytona Beach, Mainland. He was on campus not long ago, right?
Yeah, he was also here for Legacy Weekend. A guy that FSU's been recruiting for quite a while now. They're really the first school in state to kind of go in on McRae and start to host him on campus. They got him at their Seminole Showcase last summer, and that was a good evaluation point for them. And then they had offered before that, before he even participated in that camp. But after that, they really knew that he was a dog. I think Andrew Ivins came to that camp, our director of scouting on 24/7, and listed him as the alpha dog. And there were other guys there like Keldrick Falk, Lucas Simmons, and others. But it was LJ McRae that won that award via Ivins. So just a cool note. But he's got a massive frame, 6'6", 260. Yeah. I mean, he could play, inside, outside. We'll see kind of how his body develops. I personally think he could develop into an interior guy like a 3-tech, but I guess we'll kind of see, where things go on that front. But FSU's doing a great job with him. Miami is also another school heavily in the mix. They hosted him recently, and then UF hosted him on campus as well in recent weeks. Alabama, LSU, and Georgia have also recently offered McRae. So some stiff competition for a guy that's probably, one of the top defensive linemen in the state of Florida in the 24 class.
How significant is it that Florida State was one of those first teams to really push all in?
I think it is pretty significant. They've built a longstanding relationship. Multiple members of the staff, Odell Higgins, John Papuchis, have both been in contact with him for quite a while. A lot of these teams, especially the 3 aforementioned teams, LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, have offered this spring. I mean, FSU was fully in on this recruitment at the end of last summer. They had offered at the beginning of last summer. So they've been involved in communicating and building that relationship for a while. And I think that's going to pay off. At the very least, they're going to lock down one of his officials. And I think they're going to be a player with McRae into the end.
Is everybody seeing him as kind of an inside guy? Because at 6'6", 260, he doesn't have a lot of weight to gain to be seen as a defensive end.
Yeah. I think the his just overall athleticism suggests right now that he can play defensive end at the high school level. But I think realistically, most college coaches are viewing him as a future interior guy within their program when he eventually arrives.
I'm trying to find his huddle here very quickly. I find it interesting. He was a 3-star prospect a month ago.
Yeah.
Now he's rated number 90 overall by 24/7 Sports, number 148 in the composite, up to a 93 rating. Just kind of speak to how good this staff is at going out and finding guys that are lower rated that they just always seem to find guys that blow up. I don't know what it is, but they seem to have a very good eye for talent.
Definitely. I mean, we kind of saw it. Obviously, he ended up elsewhere, but you remember Nigel Lee Kelly committing to FSU really early on? I mean, that dude was unknown. Nobody knew who that dude was. Then he goes and has that season where he has like 15 sacks and like 4 games or 5 games or whatever. And he absolutely blew up on the recruiting trail. Obviously ended up at Miami, so that was unfortunate. But that was the guy that FSU had identified first and obviously locked down for a little bit before he opened things up. Now they're in a more stable position. For a guy like LJ McRae, I mean, just an absolute awesome find. Chris Nee was, banging the drum about him getting a rankings bump. He thought he was, I think he got bumped up maybe before this recent rankings update to like a low 4-star, but kept moving up in the rankings after 24/7 dropped their new top 247 rankings. And like you said, moved up to number 90, which was pretty cool to see. I mean, this is a guy we saw in camp, and it was pretty clear even back then that he was an absolute dude, and just absolute, like wreaks havoc off the edge. And, you see him there working on the inside a little bit. So that's encouraging. I'm just an absolute fan of LJ McCray. I think he's a guy that FSU absolutely needs to land in the 2024 class.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy that he's got such a good first step. He's got such a get off that I don't know. I think he's got the frame and first step that you get him up to 300 pounds and you're working with something pretty dangerous there on the inside. Is like a penetrating 3-tech.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You think you keep him at end?
I think he's got a little baby fat on him. You lean him up a little bit, you keep him at end. Yeah, he's got really long arms, really explosive hips, and gets out of his stance really well. I mean, I think it's another young man you could do either with. Seeing a lot of 4-eye out of him here, which is interesting. They're playing some 3-man front stuff.
Seen him in person multiple times, and he's got a wide frame, so I think he can put on some weight if needed. So that has me and probably college coaches suggesting that he could move to the interior on the next level. But can also see that like I was mentioning before, the athleticism, that first step, and just his long arms, and how that could be beneficial as a true pass rusher.
Yeah, I think you could make either work for him. Yeah. His ceiling's probably higher as a 3-tech, getting him bulked up. But damn if he ain't athletic.
Yeah, he is. That's what makes me see money signs, as if he can stay that athletic and put on 30 pounds.
For sure.
That's rare. I mean,
and that's exciting because the defensive line is a place they've got to continue to bring the talent level up, especially at end, in my opinion. So if he were to come in as an end, but even down the road as a 3-tech, I mean, that's a game changer right there. A player who can rush the passer from the inside. Rushing the passer is the most important thing in football. On the defensive side, in my opinion, it really just changes games. So getting pass rushers and guys that you project to be elite pass rushers is the number one thing. All right, let's keep it moving here. Number 8, a guy that's been on this list both times, James Madison II, out of St. Thomas Aquinas. What's his deal? I don't know. I think he slipped down the list a little bit. I think he was a little bit higher last time. Is he things still trending with him? Or obviously he's on the top 10. So
yeah, FSU still really likes him. He's a guy that I think moved down in the rankings some recently. I think he was a 4-star prospect and then moved down to a 3-star on the top 247 and 89 grade. So that's a really high level 3-star, obviously. But I think he moved down a bit, and that maybe scared some FSU fans. But I haven't put anything out to suggest that the FSU has stopped their pursuit of him. They really like James Madison and have for quite a while. He's a guy that stands at 6'3", 190 pounds, and has a near 6'8" wingspan. So covers a lot of space, and a guy that really impressed at St. Thomas Aquinas. Picked up an Alabama offer this spring, so it's not a guy that's slowing down on the recruiting trail at all. Was last on campus for Legacy Weekend. Basically left there saying that FSU was in a really good spot for him. Expect him to probably take some summer officials, and I could see him making a decision probably close to the start of his senior year.
Oh, that's interesting. Who are the main players? Florida State and Florida State's the one I feel like kind of is the one you've heard the most about.
Yeah. Florida State is definitely, I think, probably the leader for him right now, but I think Michigan's actually a factor for him. He's been up there multiple times, including once this spring. And then Tennessee, I think, is supposed to host him this week. And then Missouri is a school that I think he's originally from Missouri.
Okay.
He's been up there this spring as well. So a few other schools in the mix, but I think Michigan might be the biggest competition for FSU at this point.
He's a guy we've watched before and we've liked.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where his recruitment kind of goes from here. It feels like it's at a bit of a crossroads. It just feels like, in my opinion, it's at a bit of a crossroads. They've got so many stinking wide receivers on that board. If if one of those top guys, a player we're going to watch a little bit later and talk about more, Cameron Coleman or somebody like that, starts showing you more interest, maybe he slides down the board a little bit. I'm just curious.
I can see that happening, but for right now, he's a guy that's realistic for Florida State.
Yeah,
not a guy that they're probably going to have to battle like the top schools in the country
for sure.
But you'd like to see them try and go head to head and try to win some of those really tough recruiting battles. So yeah, I think if they start to get some more interest from some of those really top guys on their board, maybe he slides down a bit. But for right now, I think he's a take for Florida State.
Yeah, cool. Mike, Derek, we want to see them head-to-head battles. Let's go. I got 5 on you. All right. Number 7, DB Rashard Jones. He's a safety. This is another one that's interesting. He was on campus, obviously. Was he Legacy Weekend or was he one of those kind of oddball days?
No, he was on campus last in January, but he's had a spring game visit set for a while. So he'll be here on the 15th of April.
And he's another one that there's been some reports out there about him recently. He's been making some visits, and I think there was a good report out of somebody. I can't recall who it was exactly, but Florida State Twitter, as they like to do, got kind of all up in arms that, oh my goodness, this is a big time prospect. He sounded like he was really interested in Florida State. Now he's talking about other schools. What's up with Ricardo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the reports or anything, but I think I had read somewhere that he had listed Tennessee as his leader. So maybe that's where the panic has come. I mean, dude, guys, we're in March, April. Like, chill out. Like, I mean, these recruitments are going to change so much. But yeah, Texas has hosted him this spring. I think he was at Tennessee this past weekend. And then Alabama's set to host him this upcoming weekend before he heads to Florida State on the 15th. So he's just making some visits. I think obviously once he starts locking in officials for the summer, that'll be the really important time as Florida State looks to lock down one of those 5. I mean, if you're going to start panicking, panic then if they don't lock down one of those 5 official visits. I mean, that's going to be the most important factor in this recruitment. I think FSU is doing a pretty good job here. I don't think they're probably leading for him, but they're in that top group. So I'm not too worried, and he's a guy that they really like at the safety spot.
Yeah, they've got a lot of guys in the DB room specifically, but at safety that they're really in deep for.
Yeah.
I'm curious to just watch that position group kind of unfold here as we continue to go along. All right, number 6. I wish Chris Nee was here to talk about him because I think he really likes this guy from how I've heard Chris talk about him in the past. Offensive lineman Jason Zandamela. Zandamela is out of the Clearwater Academy International down in Clearwater, Florida. Seems to be one of those guys that Alex Atkins prioritized early. He's been on campus a bunch. Obviously has major love for Florida State. While I'm going to pull up his film, why don't you tell us a little bit more about him?
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I think Florida State really was the first school to get in on Jason Zandamela, and it's largely because they recruited and landed his former teammate in Lucas Simmons out of Clearwater Academy International. The 6'8", 4-star offensive tackle from the 2023 class was being recruited heavily by FSU, and obviously FSU's coaching staff, including Alex Atkins, was frequently making trips to that school, evaluating Lucas in person, and that's where the interest in his teammate and an interior offensive line target, Jason Zandamela, came about. And ever since then, FSU's been the school to host him on campus the most. He has a great bond with Alex Atkins. He's set to visit again after being here for Legacy Weekend. He'll be back on April 15th for the spring game. And then he's already got his OV locked in for the end of June. And he said he's going to make I believe, early July commitment. Right now, I think this is FSU's battle to lose. I think FSU just, like I said, done the best job with Zandamela out of any school. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There are a ton of schools trying to get in the mix here. Georgia was a really recent offer for him. I think he'll probably make a trip there. Miami hosted him on campus this past weekend, and obviously Mario Cristobal does a pretty good job of recruiting high school offensive linemen. So there's going to be some stiff competition over the next few months for Jason Zanamella, but I really like where FSU sits right now to eventually land his commitment.
Is this a player? Go ahead, Kev.
I mean, based off the film, he moves really well, and I think that's something that you see consistently with Atkins and the kind of kids that he's trying to bring in. They're trying to get these guys that can pull across the line of scrimmage, and they're trying to get these guys that finish well, and I think he does both of those things. So I think he's kind of, you see him here just taking off downfield and hitting somebody. That's a big calling card for the kinds of kids Atkins is looking for.
Is he seen as a center prospect for them, or just interior in general?
I think center is likely his projection. That's what most schools view him as, and as well as FSU. He could be an interior guy at like one of the guard spots, but I think he does a pretty good job snapping the ball from what I've heard. So yeah, I think he'll be good as a center at the next level.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Snaps look clean, but he's also pretty athletic and agile. Having a center that can pull is a game changer schematically. So
it is.
That intrigues the hell out of me. That's something I was going to ask you about him. And is this a young man that they push for to try to get a commitment, get him locked in?
Like what time frame are you talking about? Like in the next month or something?
Spring game.
Yeah, I think it'll be more so early July because I think that's his plan. I think he wants to take some OVs, kind of like what Lucas Simmons did last summer. Take some of those officials in June, and then come to that decision in early July and just make that decision and be done with it before his senior season. I think that's the trend of what a lot of recruits are trying to do nowadays.
What do you think the rationale is of not pushing for commitments right now? I mean, you look around nationally, there are teams that are accepting commitments right now, but I've heard you say in previous podcasts on the bench that Florida State's not making it a priority to push for commitments right now. Zanamella seems like a young man. If they said, hey, look, man, we want you to commit, he might. Why not try to get him in the fold right now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's a concerted effort to get guys to not commit. It's more so that they're not like overly pushing for it to happen.
Okay.
If Jason Zanamella called them up and said, hey, I want to commit, like they'd obviously take his commitment at any point from here on out. But it's more so that they don't want to be overbearing with it. But yeah, obviously on any recruiting visit, they're going to be talking about that kind of stuff. And they are taking commitments from guys. I mean, if Charles Lester called them up tomorrow, we'll get into him later, but they wanted to commit, like they're going to take commitments from guys they really want. It's just more so that, July is kind of the perfect month, viewing it in my head, July is a perfect month to accept commitments because it kind of falls into this like long recruiting dead period of 2 months, basically, where prospects can't get on campus. So it's like it's a buffer between the summer visits and spring before that, and then eventually the in-season stuff, which is kind of a little bit less recruiting centric because all these coaches are focused on their actual games. So yeah, I think it's more so because that's the month where a lot of these recruits are trying to make their decisions. They want to take these summer officials, 4 to 5 of them, and then get their decision done in July and kind of get ready for their senior season. That's kind of where things have trended over the last few years. And I think that's just, FSU falling in line with that. But like I said, if any of these guys on this top 10 list wanted to commit, FSU would take their commitment. They're obviously hosting them and recruiting them heavily while they're on campus and off campus. So it's not a concerted effort to not take commitments. It's more so that they're just not trying to be overbearing about it.
That's interesting. I mean, look, people hear things like that when they're said and they take them one way. I want to make sure that we're saying exactly what we mean. Like, they'll accept commitments. It's just not a priority for them to go out and say, look, man, we want you committed.
Because
get in here, get in
the reality,
fold.
The reality is these kids are going to take visits. Like it's the spring and the summer. Like this is the time to do it. During the season, they've got their high school games on Fridays, sometimes even Saturdays. They don't really have a whole lot of time to go out and make these visits, and they're not as intimate because if you're making a game day visit, you're really there to watch the game. You're not really there to sit down with the coaching staff for 48 hours straight and get recruited the entire time. That's what these summer and spring visits are about. It's what it's all about, basically, besides, maybe a practice, right? But that's only like 2 hours of the visit. So, I think I think that's primarily the reason, because if you take a commitment right now, the likelihood of that kid not stepping on another campus for the next 3 months is very low, and that's not really what you want to get yourself into. You want to have a kid locked in, and then he doesn't take any more visits, and that's way easier to do when you're getting a kid in July, and then he can't really, visit a ton of places, at least intimately, for the next 3 to 4 months.
Priorities: last visit, last commitment. I mean, those are the ones that matter. So it's just interesting. I think it's a fascinating topic. Recruiting is obviously going to be that's the next step for these guys.
Yeah. And
analyzing these decisions and these things are I think they're important for us to see how well they're doing. Are they in line with what other elite recruiting schools are doing? Obviously, you're always going to have your own things that you'd like to do, but just curious. Number 5. All right, this one is baffled me. Twice now he's supposed to have been on campus. Twice he has no-showed. Offensive lineman Jonathan Daniels, Bud Elliott's favorite topic. For those that listen to Bud, shout out to Bud Elliott. Jonathan Daniels, he of the, I think it's 6'3" and 7/8 variety, but really long arms. An offensive tackle prospect, but not necessarily offensive tackle height, which was kind of the point there. But has really long arms. One of the better offensive line prospects in the state of Florida, and one of the better offensive tackle prospects nationally in a down year. He's no-showed twice. What in the world is going on? How did he get number 5?
Yeah, I mean, the no-shows are not too worrisome to me. I think the thing that happened, at least this past weekend, Daniels told Chris Nee of North 24/7 that I guess they had issue getting a rental car, him and his family, this weekend, so they couldn't make it over on Saturday like they expected to. I don't think it's a huge issue. I expect him on campus one of these days, probably this week or next, leading up to the spring game, or maybe even on the day of the spring game. FSU sits in a really good spot for him. He hasn't been to a ton of places. It's not like he's spurning FSU to go visit other schools. He just didn't go anywhere this past weekend. I think the biggest competition is probably LSU and UF, and maybe even Miami for him. I know those have been schools that have recently hosted him. I think Georgia's also been in the mix a little bit, but I think FSU sits in a good spot. I mean, he's going to take his officials likely during the summer, and I expect FSU to be one of those. Obviously, travel shouldn't be an issue on an official since it's paid for by the school.
Right.
So, I'm not worried. I think people are getting a little bit too worked up. If it becomes a constant trend, then obviously we'll take note of it. But no, he remains a top target for Florida State in the 24 class, and he's a guy that, like you said, has some, I think, position versatility, just because his height might not suggest that he's a tackle prospect, but apparently his wingspan is pretty absurd for that height. So I guess you never know, but I think most schools are projecting him as a tackle on the next level.
Yeah. All right. You heard it here first. No shows. No worries.
For now.
No, I think in this case, it's much ado about nothing. Seems like he's a big priority for them, and they are a big priority for him. Who you had listed at number 4 surprised the hell out of me, though. I'm going to be completely honest. A Georgia commit. He was supposed to be back. He hasn't been back. We'll see if he makes it back. Feels a lot like Conrad Hussey recruitment to me. 5-star tight end, Landon Thomas. Whoo, get your popcorn ready, because
hey, what happened with Conrad Hussey again? I remember putting him on the top 10 list multiple months, and people were really mad at me because Hussey hadn't stepped on campus since June. Hey, I'm not going to put a guy on this list if I'm not confident that FSU has a shot. Just stay tuned. That's all I'm going to say.
Stay tuned.
Hey,
we're
moving
along.
I'm not suggesting there's a flip happening right now.
Nothing else needs to be said.
I'm not suggesting there's a flip happening right now, but FSU is in this, and they will continue to stay in this for at least the next couple of months. I think they're doing a great job recruiting him, and don't be surprised if he's back on campus this spring.
Don't talk about it. We don't even talk about it. Don't even need to say anything about it. Kirby doesn't need to know. Kirby, ain't nothing going on down here, big guy. All right. We are going to keep it moving, though, because I do want to get to the film before we get too in the weeds with a lot of these guys, even though they're obviously studs and very important. Number 3 is the defensive end, Dylan Stevenson, out of Mario Cristobal and John Ruiz's alma mater in Miami, Florida, Columbus High School. Stevenson is the one at defensive end, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's been the guy for a while. They've kind of expanded that board, though. So, like I said earlier, I think this could shake up a little bit over the next couple of months. But Dylan Stevenson is definitely a top target for Florida State. He's been that way for over a year now. Yeah, he'll be on campus again on April 15th for the spring game. That's been the plan for a while. But he's taken some trips. He's, I think, at Miami tomorrow. I think that's probably the biggest competition for Florida State in this one. And obviously, you mentioned before all the connections to Cristobal and that staff and, the people surrounding that school. I think that's going to be a tough obstacle for Florida State to overcome. Michigan's another program involved with him, I know. I think he's been to a few other places this spring. So FSU will get a chance to have another crack at him during the spring game. And then, they'll work on trying to set up an official with Stevenson.
Number 2, this one intrigued me too. I think he was high the last time, but JoJo Trader, the fact he's up at number 2, I mean, I know he's a huge time talent, a huge time want, or a big time want, but to be enlisted at number 2, that really shocked me. That means there are some legit interest coming back. Talk about that.
I think that's the biggest thing of note. I think the public perception is that JoJo Trader's likely a Miami lock. And while I think Miami has, a lot of footing in this recruitment, I think Florida State has as much or maybe even more footing with Trader right now. And I'm saying this right now, things could change. I mean, JoJo Trader's a recruit from South Florida. I just remember that. I'm always going to remember that initial conversation I had with him in January when he told me his recruitment was going to be all over the place. And I tried to warn y'all when the Miami Crystal Balls came in that, I didn't think this one was over. Florida State did get him on campus in early March. They're going to work to get him back on campus either later this month or sometime over the next few months. I didn't know this. I'm going to write about this soon, but I guess the recruiting calendar changed this year. And so May used to be a completely dead month for visits on campus. Now guys can get on campus, I guess, every Saturday of May. I didn't even know this until today when Chris sent me the recruiting schedule. So it was pretty cool to know, I guess. I don't know how excited I am to
get the break, man. Come on.
Yeah, to be back on the bench. But so these guys, all these coaches are going to be out on the road again in May, and then they're going to have to come back and host visit weekends. So it never ends. I mean, that's just a crazy profession, man. But so expect JoJo Trader to get back on campus over the next few months. I mean, I think JoJo's trying to make a commitment over the summer, and I think FSU feels decently, confident that they have some staying power here, and they're going to be one of the main factors when he's getting down to this decision table and making that choice. That's all I have to say for now.
They did really well with the last big time South Florida wide receiver that they went all in on. Let's see how they do this time around. Last but certainly not least, number 1 overall on the top 10, and then we're going to get into some of the honorable mention guys that I'm really intrigued by. But number 1, DB, Charles Lester. He was just at Ohio State this last weekend, posting all kinds of fire pics in the all black. I'm sure that had some people wetting themselves when they saw those pictures because they are really worried about Charles Lester going elsewhere. I'm telling you right now, I think Charles Lester is going to be a null. What do you say, Mr. Recruiting Analyst?
I agree with you, Mr. Semi-recruiting analyst. I mean, this is an easy choice to put him number 1. I mean, he's a guy that has just been constantly visiting Florida State over the last however many years. And I remember taking Charles Lester's photo, his initial 247 photo outside of a game at Doak. I think it was like 2 years ago. It wasn't this past season. It was the 2021 season. And it just, since then, FSU's just been the school that's been most consistent with him. He's obviously got all the suitors in the world: Alabama, like you said, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida, many others. But I think the main schools here, the schools that he has official visits set up to are Georgia, Ohio State, and Florida State. I think it's Georgia first, then Ohio State, then Florida State in that order for June officials. FSU is set to host him last. I expect him to probably make a decision in July or maybe late June. Like you said, I think FSU has a really good shot to land his commitment. I mean, he said as much basically, and whenever we've talked to him, especially this past time during Legacy Weekend, he got to meet Jameis Winston. That was a huge highlight, and he left that visit saying he was really close to committing. That's a pretty fun interview if you haven't watched it on the Noles 24/7 YouTube channel from a few weeks ago. But yeah, an absolute stud cornerback prospect that FSU's just invested so much time and resources into over the last year and change.
Yeah, and it just would be an important one to get in the fold. Getting a 5-star caliber player in the fold in like July just is going to send waves through your class.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to build that momentum as you get into the season, and then push down towards the end there in December, and try to really put the finishing touches on your class. All right, that does it for the top 10. I'm going to run what you've been able to read them on the bottom. Kamarian Franklin, 2 Charles Lester. I'm curious to see, probably drop another one of these after the spring game, maybe.
Yeah, maybe like
I know it's only a couple weeks away. So
late April, early May, or something like that. Because I think we'll learn a lot about the board over the next few weeks. So they have some pretty talented prospects coming through.
So I want to move into the honorable mention because, as I discussed earlier, I thought it was interesting how deep that honorable mention list is.
Yeah.
Just every position. It's got 3, 4, 5 names except for linebacker, but we'll see what happens there. Who knows? Crazy things happen all the time. Brendan had some fun tweet that they've been sending out a bunch of linebacker offers. Who knows what's going to go on there? So the first position group that you had for honorable mention has a list of names. Obviously, Florida State already has. He's not 5-star anymore. He's a 4-star. And Cameron Davis, he's a 5-star in my heart, though. He's a stud. There's 3 names here. One was recently on campus. One is a local speedster. And then Jordan Lyle out of St. Thomas Aquinas was thought maybe to be the main priority outside of Cameron Davis. But can we say that now?
Yeah, I mean, he's among that top group. He hasn't lessened in the amount of priority that FSU is showing on him. I just think FSU's kind of moved up some of these guys into that group of prospects that they want to recruit heavily to join Cam Davis in that running back core.
I'm going to pull his film up here. The wonderful Dane Draper, by the way, dropped a little comment that Brendan just dropped the whole story on that. Hey, Dane, come on, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. All right, so I have Mekhi Danzy's film pulled up here. He really intrigues me because I don't think he's a running back, personally.
What do you think he is?
Well, I guess you could call him a running back. I think he would fit that tailback role.
Yeah, I think that's what he's being recruited as.
Yeah, like Lawrence Tolafili, he would be a wide receiver, a guy that would maybe get the ball 4 or 5 times out of the backfield, just kind of a jack of all trades. What he is fast as hell.
Yeah, I mean, he had 1,800 rushing yards this past season for Florida High. I'm on the sideline of one of these highlights, I'm sure. I watched 2 of his games this season.
Yeah, he's definitely a strider. Does he show some receiving clips in here?
I'm sure.
I believe he does. He's a track guy, a very special one at that.
He's a very elite track runner.
That's some next level speed.
Yeah.
That's a good looking logo they got in the middle of the field too.
Where do things stand with him?
Yeah, so FSU has been involved with him forever. He's a guy that they offered at the mega camp last summer. But no, I mean, he's, like you said, I don't know if he's being recruited as like a traditional running back, but he is being recruited by David Johnson, the running backs coach.
Yeah.
But I think his most likely role is likely going to be similar to a guy like Lawrence Toafili. They have a similar frame. I think Danzy's a little bit, has a better straight line speed than Toafili, but some of the lateral stuff, some of the acceleration might, be in Toafili's favor. I just think that they have some similarities there, and I think that's kind of what FSU's selling him on. But he's definitely not a traditional running back. I mean, he looks a little bit too lengthy to be carrying it out of the backfield like that.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that just he knows how to run the football. I mean, he does it at a very elite level. And Florida High is not playing, the best of competition every week, but they're going to, deep in the state playoff rank every year. And he's a guy that produced at an exceptionally high level for them. 1,800 yards is nothing to joke about. So, I think,
I think
super talented player.
I think as much as you want to say maybe running back's not his strength, I think it's more that you want to use that straight line speed, going vertical as fast as possible. So if you can get him as a wide receiver, you can kind of get those matchups on linebackers and safeties, and hopefully, just run him downfield where he can use that speed right off the bat.
Yeah, he intrigues me because I think that the potential's there that I don't want this to sound bad because I don't mean it this way, because I do think I'm really high on him. I think the potential's there that he doesn't give you a whole lot because he's kind of tight-hipped. What is he? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a running back? I mean, you can't just turn around and toss the ball and outrun everybody on every play. That just doesn't work in college football. But if you can get him developed as a running back, give him jet sweeps, find a way to get him involved in some RPO, quick RPO stuff, some of the arrow stuff you've seen on these highlights, I think there's a really good football player in there that needs to be unlocked. Man,
I think this might sound a little crazy. I think if I were to make a 1-to-1 comp on this team, it wouldn't be to Toa Philly. It would be to
Trey Benson.
I was thinking Williamson.
Oh,
I was thinking he's kind of built and he runs like Darian Williamson. Just a longer strider, a little bit longer of a build. Obviously, he's not a wide receiver based off these clips, but I think that's the kind of athleticism you're looking at.
I say Trey because he's tight-hipped. He's not gonna make a lot of guys miss at the point of attack. Like, he's a strider. Get him to top speed, let him go outside zone.
Definitely. If we're doing a straight running back comp, he's a zone guy, not necessarily a gap runner.
It's interesting to me though. I'm curious to see if that's a guy that they are all in on. Really want. Okay. Zach gave me the finger.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a live commitment.
Oh,
live commitment.
They just got a linebacker commitment from Jaden Parish.
Son of a
film
biscuit.
Going,
all right,
pull it up.
Spell it for me.
Jayden Parish.
You guys are seeing how the
Where's he
bread
out
is
of?
made here.
Atlantic High School in Delray Beach, maybe?
Yeah, that's him.
Son of a nutcracker. We've got a freaking live commitment, and it's a linebacker.
Yeah.
So I would put him in my top most wanted recruits.
All right. He does not have a he's got a huddle. He just doesn't have a clean, like, these are my highlights from. So this is going to be him playing St. Thomas Aquinas.
That is an all right football team.
Share this. Jaden Parish. We're going to get a silly little advertisement. Ooh, all right. He's there in the hot fire circle.
All right, we can't see it, AB.
Oh, you can't see it. My bad. Got to share that.
I just shared
come
it
on, man.
for
You
us.
can push buttons.
Let's see. Playing some
hot fire circle. Initial
some
steps
Mike
downhill.
linebacker.
Redirects. Looks like he's got good speed.
Yeah, for an inside backer.
This is an offer that went out like relatively recently. I believe Randy Shannon and Florida State extended a scholarship to him. Let me look. At the end of March 27th. So a week later, basically, he announced the commitment to FSU. And it is official. Mike Norvell tweeted about it. Said big hitter coming to Tallahassee in Tribe 24. So I think there is I'm looking at his highlights right now, or his huddle page. There's one of the clips that says Jaden Parish top 15 plays. It's from 6 months ago. So I assume that's from the season, or at least portion of the season.
Yeah. All right. So immediately looks like another Tatum Bethune.
Yeah, it's the common kind of build you got there.
Yeah, they seem to like. Somebody seems to like these guys that are 6 foot 5'11", 6 foot, 215, 220 pounds kind of pluggers.
Yeah, navigates through space well.
Yeah. Kind of sifts through the traffic well, comes forward, looks athletic enough, but not a super athlete. All right, so that's our newest. I can go back. We can maybe watch one more.
There's the top 15 plays.
Yeah, but I believe it's from. That's 6 months ago. That's got to be from. We'll give it a try, Kev.
Let's see his top 15.
Brendan, like Dane said, wrote a little blurb on Jaden Parish from earlier today. Said he feels and looks like the linebackers that Shannon has previously gravitated towards. So like you guys were saying, thicker frame with game more predicated on short area burst rather than explosive range. But Parish is instinctive. 150 tackles last season with 4 interceptions and quick, 8 rushing touchdowns. He sees the field well, processing and reacting at a high level. Good ball skills, understands where he needs to be. Frame feels truncated somewhat. I do wonder how much upside / room to grow he has physically. That was literally from within the last hour.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of room for growth in that frame. Does definitely come downhill. All right, here's a nice job of him covering mesh and then driving on the quarterback. Definitely a big hitter.
Yeah, I think there's some merit and some explanation you can give here. I mean, if you look at the best linebackers in college football today, most of them aren't freak athletes. Most of them are guys that read the game well, know where to be, have good instincts, and I think Shannon's probably just looking for someone he feels like is coachable and can be in the right place, because that's I see that he navigates the box well. I think he's athletic enough, but I mean, he's going to be these guys end up being box linebackers. You play with 2 true linebackers, and so you've got to have someone that you can trust to kind of make a tackle in between the tackles.
Yeah, there's something to be said for reliability. He's quicker when he's coming forward than when he's going backwards. So
yeah,
there's going to be some. Can he understand coverage concepts well enough, read the quarterback well enough, that kind of stuff to be a relevant player in pass defense? But as far as playing the run, I mean, yeah, dude's a fitter. All right, so here he's dropping. I mean, that's a hell of a play. I think in the college game with the hashes being a little bit wider, that's maybe going to be a little bit tougher play to be made. But you see some of his instincts. He seems to be in the right place all the time.
Yeah, he would definitely be like a will linebacker for what they use him for, a Tatum Bethune type player.
Forced fumble. So,
which is,
all right. Yeah. It looks like a Randy linebacker. I don't want that to sound bad because I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, I think there's a high floor, but not high ceiling prospect there, which is okay at the linebacker position. As a Philadelphia Eagles fan, for the last 30 years, I've been dying for him to draft not 30 years, but for the last however many years, I've been dying for them to draft an elite linebacker in the first round, and they never do because they don't believe in the value of the position. They think that you get guys that are reliable, very much like what Randy feels, in that position, and you can win a lot of football games with them.
Hey, you have to get guys. So you're going to be they ask their defensive line to do kind of 2 gaps sometimes, and so you've got to have linebackers you trust to be able to read those gaps and fill those gaps. It's a very heady position in this 4-2-5, and so I think that's probably some of the logic there.
I tend to agree. All right, so poor McCray Danzy got sabotaged by a live commitment, but that was a lot of fun and exciting. I wasn't expecting that tonight. Threw me a little, threw me for a loop there a little bit. This is a running back, though, that I'm very intrigued. I watched just a little bit because I wanted to watch it live. Christian Clark out of Arizona, but has a ton of Florida State ties. what can you tell us about him? He was on campus.
Yeah. So he was, like you said, on campus this past weekend on Saturday and a little bit on Sunday. A guy that is from Arizona, but he's got all the ties to FSU. His mom attended school at Florida State. His uncle is Kenny Felder, the former football and baseball player at FSU in the 90s. So he's got all the connections. Actually has a ton of family that still lives in the Niceville/Destin area, so just a few hours west of Tallahassee in North Florida. So, was in this, area of the state, area of the country, I guess, a lot growing up. He said he came over here to visit family quite a bit, despite living all the way out in Phoenix, Arizona. But yeah, this visit was pretty crucial. Florida State had offered him and been, pretty interested in talking to him, over the phone over the last few months. But after seeing, him in person, I think he's moved up a lot on their priority list when it comes to the running back board. And I think he has done the same with Florida State among his list of schools. And he's got quite the list. I mean, he's been a ton of places, Texas, Oregon, many schools, and he'll continue to make trips. But he made it clear that FSU is a school that now sits among that top group within his recruitment. And he said he definitely plans to be back.
This film is really fascinating when compared next to Mekhi Danzy's film. You can see that when it comes to skill players, they're not necessarily looking for all-round players. They're looking for specialists, guys that do one thing really well that they can work with, right? So with Danzy, you had a guy that, he was a strider. He was a top end speed guy. This guy seems more like a between the tackles, Maurice Jones-Drew, get lost in the trees, kind of make one or two moves and get upfield quickly, and just like complete opposite running backs, but they kind of just fill a different niche within the offense, and that they can be used to hunt for different matchups and different opportunities. And so I think this is kind of fascinating to see right next to each other.
It sounds really, really familiar to something we saw this last year. I said that Danzy reminded me a lot of Trey Benson. I immediately think that this kid reminds me a lot of Trayshawn Ward. A better version of Trayshawn Ward, which is not a knock on Trayshawn because obviously he's a good player. Hope he has a hell of a season at Kansas State. But a counter runner, a good inside runner like you were talking about, Kev. Shifty, quick, going to make you miss in the hole. Whereas Trey Benson is an outside zone runner and a counter runner who wants to get to full speed and get downhill and punish you. Danzy's the same type. Maybe not the punisher, but wants to get downhill, get his shoulder squared, make one cut and go. Clark is a make you miss in the backfield, going to want to run inside zone, be shifty, quicker and fast. And he's a good player. Yeah, that would be a hell of a combo. You get him paired up with Cam Davis, I think you got something cooking there.
Yeah, his mom was loving it on the visit, kind of comparing the current state of FSU's campus to when she was there, noting all the changes, obviously, over the years. I know that experience because my parents, whenever they're up here at FSU, they're always talking about that, all the new buildings and stuff. So
that'll look familiar right there.
Yeah.
That wheel out of the backfield, Norvell loves that.
So, I mean, this is a guy I think to really monitor moving forward. The running back board's got some depth to it, which is something I don't think we've been able to say in the past couple of years, but they've got Cam Davis in the fold. They've got three pretty good prospects that Zach listed on the honorable mention list waiting in the wings, and that they're going to recruit heavily, see which one they can get. So we're going to keep it moving forward here. I'm going to switch banners. We're going to move from running backs, and we're going to switch over to wide receivers, and three wide receivers specifically. I'm going to talk about Jeremiah Smith, and I'm not going to talk about Jeremiah Smith because I don't want to get my heart hurt and get my hopes up. But I can't believe Jeremiah Smith made the honorable mention list because he's committed to Ohio State. He's the best wide receiver prospect I've seen in a number of years, probably since Julio Jones, if I'm being completely honest. The kid is a freak show. He's on the honorable mention list for a reason, though, because he must be giving somebody some attention. So what can you tell us about Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's of all the honorable mentions, I'd probably put him at the least likely just because he's a guy that's committed to Ohio State, which is wide receiver U. I mean, recently, especially in recent years, they've been churning out top receiver picks in the NFL. So, yeah, I think Jeremiah Smith is a guy that obviously visited Florida State in early March, came away from that trip saying that FSU is going to be a likely official visit destination. I think that's probably the next step. I doubt he makes it back to campus this spring. I mean, South Florida prospects, it's always kind of hard to get them, all the way up to Tallahassee multiple times in a single recruiting period. But I think FSU is among the schools that are trying to flip him. I think UF is another program that has done a pretty good job with him. And then Georgia is probably the most likely school. If you were to go anywhere right now, I would expect it to be Georgia, just because obviously, two-time defending national champions. They are a school that he said he definitely wants to officially visit. So we'll see kind of where things stand as we head into the summer. I think he's probably already got his official visit locked into Ohio State. I would expect FSU to push heavily to try and get one of those 5. I mean, that's, like I said, I think that's probably the next step with Jeremiah Smith in Florida State.
Yeah, but if you're wide receiver, do you really want to go play for UGA?
True, but you can go win some natties, I guess.
Yeah, while you watch the tight ends get all the passes.
Jeremiah Smith is too good to not dominate anywhere. I mean, that, like AB said, one of the best receiver prospects that I've ever seen in person. And this is a guy that I think me and Gabby from the Miami side are probably some of the first people to evaluate Jeremiah Smith back when he was a freshman or sophomore at Pace High School down in Miami. And he was smaller then, but now he's like, fully grown 6'3", 100 whatever pounds. I mean, he's just absolute physical freak. And he put up 1,000+ yards in a receiving core that included FSU signee Edwin Joseph, Jojo Trader that we mentioned earlier, and a few other guys that are going to end up at Power 5 schools. So just absolute, difference maker. And if FSU had any shot or any realistic shot to land this guy, I mean, just would be an absolute program changer at that position.
Yeah, he would immediately go to the top of any board you can post about anybody, because the dude he's a real deal. So I guess we'll see what happens if Brian Hartline maybe goes and accepts a head coaching job somewhere. You just trying to position yourself like you're trying to do with Landon Thomas to give yourselves a chance come December. So we'll wait and see, and maybe Jeremiah Smith shows up on campus again. Shout out to Ingram Smith. I just want to shout him out. I think he deserves a shout out from time to time. So we're going to keep it moving forward. A wide receiver, I have a prospect pulled up, Cam Coleman. This one feels like maybe it's slipping away. Maybe he's got some interest elsewhere, but he's been on campus, but he was only here for 2 hours, then immediately went to LSU. And this is a dude I really like, but I'm not getting my hopes up.
Yeah, I mean, he was here that early morning, but he was part of like a 7-on crew that was heading over to play in New Orleans for a tournament. And that's why they, obviously went over to Baton Rouge to go visit with LSU. But Cam Coleman came prior to any of his 7-on teammates arriving on campus. He arrived at like 7:30 a.m. in the morning and stayed till like noon when they left. So he got a decent visit in. He did all the usual stuff, and they greeted him like he was a huge priority. So yeah, I think he's really close to the top of their board, and they were prioritizing this dude before he blew up in the rankings. I mean, this is a guy that's ranked, I think, like within the top 20 now in the top 247. Is a 5-star on multiple networks. So yeah, he's absolutely blown up this spring. But I think that the competition is going to come from the in-state schools. It's a guy that plays at Phoenix City in Alabama. Alabama wants him and is recruiting him, hosted him on campus in March. And Auburn is another school that is heavily in the mix. They also hosted him on campus in March. And I think they're probably those two schools. I would put Auburn in the lead right now. I think Auburn's done a really good job with him.
That's also in the backyard of Auburn.
Yeah. I don't think this recruitment's anywhere close to done though. He's going to take a lot more visits from what I've heard and kind of dwindle things down from there. But FSU really likes him. Ron Dugans is in contact every day. I think who's covering him there, man? What happened? Can you replay that one? That was kind of fun.
DB blitz that didn't go very well.
He forgot.
No, they seem to realize that he's uncovered about right when the film starts.
DB had some pretty good closing speed though.
He did. How tall is this kid?
6'3", I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he's listed at.
Yeah, so got the prototypical size, 6'3", 175 on our, and he's the number 21 overall prospect in the country, 98 grade on the top 247.
He's got that Pokey Wilson speed.
Everything's got to be a Pokey Wilson.
Shout out my boy Pokey. This dude's special. He's got start-stop. He's got really fluid hips, ball skills there. You see football, strong hands. He's got, it looks to me to be elite vertical speed. He's able to stack the DB, get on his toes and get by him. Tracks the ball really well.
Basically everything you'd want from a wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, FSU, and this isn't a recruit that like FSU has no shot with. Like they're legitimately in the picture for him. I think probably within his like top 3 or 4. He visited for a game last fall, then was back on campus like we talked about earlier in March. A part of that 7-on-7 group, but also his family was there with him on that trip. Mm-hmm. Like it was a personalized visit for Cam Coleman as he went to go join his team in New Orleans for that 7-on tournament.
Yeah, I like a lot of these wide receivers.
Let's just get a few of them.
We've got so many on the board. It's really wild to see. All right, the last wide receiver prospect we're going to talk about, we're going to speed this up a little bit because we're at an hour and 6 minutes and my voice is fading. BJ Gibson, baseball player, formerly committed to the University of Tennessee. We've watched this film before, so we're not going to pull it up again. Where's he rank at the pantheon of the wide receiver board?
He's probably not like the top upper echelon of targets. He's probably somewhere like either right below that. Or like middle, of their board. He's a guy that I think if FSU really wants, they can land. I think he has really high interest in Florida State. He's a guy that, like you said, was formerly committed to Tennessee for baseball, but stepped away from that. And FSU's been the school that he's visited the most by far. I think he's been on campus like 7 or 8 times. He's like joking about it, like the last time he was here for Legacy Weekend, about just how many times he's been on campus. Was here in January, back in March. We'll see if he makes it back for like the spring game or something. But FSU's going to continue recruiting him. And they've done a really good job of, like I said, building up that board and having guys that, maybe BJ Gibson is the guy they want to all out push for right now, but he's the guy they're going to keep warm in case some of the guys we've already talked about, maybe those recruitments go south and they need to pivot. BJ Gibson's a guy that they can turn to maybe. So, yeah, I think he's a player that they really like. And they've obviously been involved in his process for quite a while.
Well, based on the comment section here in the YouTube chat, I can tell that people are not a big fan of the new linebacker commit, and I'm not shocked. There's not a star next to his name, and that's all people really pay attention to. Moving on to the tight end board, the honorable mention tight end board. We know Landon Thomas sits up there at number 4. Let's go, baby, bring it on home. But Walter Matthews, Kylan Fox, Hubert Calise Jr. Hubert's one of those guys I feel like if they said, hey, you want to commit, they probably could get him to commit. He's going to be back for the spring game, right?
Yeah, I believe he said that's either a possibility or that's locked in.
And Kylan Fox also expected for the spring game?
Yes.
I thought I saw that. Matthews, no, though.
Matthews, I think we reported he'll be out here on the 11th. So he'll be here in the next week or so.
The Chris Thompson revenge tour lives on, and it's living very strong. All 3 really good prospects. How many tight ends are they looking to take this class?
Probably 1 to 2.
Okay.
I think the expectation from what I've heard is that tight end room that they currently have on the roster is probably going to see a lot of turnover over the next year or so, just between, obviously they got a guy like Jaheim Bell that's probably going to be a one and done. And then Kyle Morlock, if he has some crazy season, could be that, but doubt it. So that they're going to roll into next season with veteran guys like Morlock and Biscuit. And then the rest of that room, I think you could see a lot of turnover. They've had some injuries there, and then just some guys that probably are just going to, look for opportunities elsewhere over the next year.
So they have a wide range of tight ends currently on the roster. I mean, if you look at Biscuit to Bell, you have guys that range from like blocking, guys that major in blocking, and guys that major in receiving, like Jaheim Bell, who probably won't even be used much as an inline tight end. Most of these guys that are on the board currently, where do you think they kind of fit into that range?
Yeah, I mean, they do have variety. I think Walter Matthews is probably the closest to an inline tight end that they have on their board. But a guy like Kylan Fox is like maybe a straight pass catcher, like maybe just a big receiver. He's a guy that probably you wouldn't line up in line that much. Maybe more like a Cam McDonald that you're not trying to trust in the blocking game as much. But he's a guy that is a physical mismatch against slot DBs and some linebackers because of his speed and athleticism and his size. I think he's over 6'4" and over 200 pounds already. So they've got variety. And then Landon Thomas, I mean, it speaks for himself. He's the best tight end in the country by far, in my opinion. His film is some of the most impressive film you can watch in all of the 24 class. But he's a guy that does everything probably a little bit better as a pass catcher right now, but a guy that probably has the ability to block in line. So yeah, I mean, they're continuing the trend. They like to recruit a variety of different skill sets. And like you said, some guys are majoring in the ability to block, some the ability to catch the football downfield. I think obviously you try to look for more of a complete player, and I think they've got some of that on their roster. I mean, I think Kyle Morlock is a guy that can do both. He's primarily been a pass catcher, but we've seen him indulge in some blocking in FSU spring ball. So yeah, I guess we'll see. But I think they've done a good job of kind of having a variety of skill sets on the board to kind of continue the trend that they've been working with in that room over the past few years.
It feels like the way that board's developing, they want a pass catcher and they want a guy that they feel like can do both.
Yeah.
To me, it's Hubert Kalist and Matthews are the two that you probably would feel you could develop to do both. Fox and Landon Thomas are the pass catchers.
Yeah.
See where the chips lie. I mean, they've got a pretty decent shot with all four of them. Go get two and let's make it happen. On to my favorite position in the world. And I'm so sad that there's only two names here because I would talk about 100 of them. Ethan Callaway, Jordan Seaton. Am I saying that last name right? We have Seaton's film here because he was really the highest rated prospect, and I was curious to watch his film. But talk about Callaway for me.
Yeah, Callaway was here for the Legacy weekend. That was his first ever trip to FSU. Really awesome interview. If you want to watch that, that's also on the YouTube channel from a few weeks back. But a guy that really had great things to say about Alex Atkins and the entire FSU staff. FSU made a move for him then. I think Florida State themselves likes Callaway a lot. They like, the mental buildup of him and just, obviously physically he's really impressive. But yeah, he's a guy that I think FSU is going to continue to recruit pretty heavily and likely try to host for an official visit when he's trying to use his officials. And then Jordan Seaton, who we're about to watch. I mean, this is a guy that's ranked as one of the top interior offensive linemen in the country out of, I believe, DC, St. John's High School. He's currently, I believe, moving high school, so he might be playing somewhere else this fall, and that place might be within the Sunshine State, but we'll see. But yeah, I think both are pretty high priorities for Florida State. That's a board that moves around a lot based on.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, well, it's a lot. Like Alex Atkins likes to do in-person evaluations and not just like watching guys work out, like watching guys how they process information. He like basically tests them a little bit like on their visits. Like he'll do like different exercises and stuff, like mental exercises, and just see how they kind of process it. And that's an important evaluation piece that he's, I guess, discovered works pretty well when he's recruiting offensive linemen. especially out of the high school ranks, because that's, more of a long-term development. Whereas the guy that you're getting out of the portal is, he pretty much is what he is, especially if he's a multi-year guy. So, yeah, I think both of those guys probably passed the check for Alex Atkins on their recent visits to Florida State. Both were here in March. And, let's get into Seton's film.
Well, there was a question from Ben Martin in the chat. There was a pretty highly ranked offensive tackle prospect on campus this weekend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was around Florida State around Tallahassee for 3 days. Do we have has there been any updates on him? Or are you guys working to get a hold of him?
Yeah, you're talking about Nair Daniels. I'm working the phone with his camp to try and get him for an interview soon. But yeah, he's a guy that's also in the mix. He's been on campus actually 2 times this spring. I'm trying to figure out kind of where he stands on FSU's board. But he's a guy that did make an entire weekend trip to campus. And I am definitely working that. I've been working that yesterday and today, trying to get Nair on the phone.
So Ben, keep an eye out on Noles 24/7.
Yeah.
Zach will have an update if anybody's going to get an update from that young man, and maybe a name that we see make its way onto the top 10 or the honorable mention list as we move forward.
Definitely.
All right. So Jordan Seton, was on campus. His interview was incredible. I normally go and click. We'll watch for a minute or so and listen to a few words to hear what these kids have to say. I was glued to. Thought his answers were fascinating. Really good prospect. Again, another guy. We'll see where he fits on the offensive line, but a big time player. We're going to turn his film on. Kind of break it down for us, Zach, because I think this is one of those guys that fans are going to look at and say, "Oh yeah, we've got to get him."
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that FSU made it a priority to get him on campus. He was supposed to, I think, make it earlier on in spring, but he didn't make it in then. But actually made it a priority to get back on campus. And obviously that's not an easy thing to do when he's all the way up there in DC. But he came back to the state of Florida, visited both FSU and UF. I mean, after those visits, he tweeted out a photo with Mike Norvell on Twitter. It was pretty interesting. It was like when you see your friend that you've been playing the video game with forever in person for the first time or something. It was him and Norvell on the field. So that was a pretty interesting tweet. But yeah, I think FSU made a move for him. And he's a really talented prospect, a guy that I think absolutely loves the game of football. Chris Nee and I were kind of chatting with Jordan and the gentleman that was with him on his visit after the interview. Mm-hmm. And we were literally there for like 30 minutes just talking. He's an awesome dude to talk to. I think that's probably why Alex Atkins likes him so much, because he likes dudes that have that kind of charisma about them. And it's usually a good sign for when you're trying to build out the culture of that room, the offensive line room.
I was trying to figure out why the hell that play was on here, and then it's because he gets up and finishes it very well.
This guy,
he's quick.
Yeah, you're not supposed to move that well and be that big.
Yeah, I'm curious. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard?
He's ranked as an interior player right now within all the recruiting services, but yeah, I think he's viewed as a guard.
Yeah, I'd love to see his height, weight, kind of length, and that kind of stuff. I mean, he finishes people. Holy moly! Mike Norvell can be his best friend.
He's listed 6'5", 287 by us.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jonathan Daniels, who's listed at 6'3" and whatever for his weight, is the tackle, and this young man's the guard. He's athletic.
Yeah.
This guy, you can basically guarantee if Alex Atkins has offered an offensive lineman, there is one clip of him just laying on top of a guy at the end of the play, at least.
Yeah, I feel like
there's a clip of him pulling across the line of scrimmage.
Definitely a necessary trait. No, but I mean, what offensive line recruits out of high school does? Like, I feel like most recruits that Atkins is getting out of the high school ranks are pretty position versatile. Like, he recruits a lot of swing linemen, and I think that could be the case with Seton. I guess we'll see kind of how he develops and his body develops into the next level.
Freaking ID and a blitz out here. You don't see that a lot in high school film.
He also picks up the blitz while blocking the defensive end.
Yeah.
Whoa.
He kind of like gives a left hand shove to the
Mm-hmm.
blitzer to kind of stop him.
This kid's a good player.
Well, that clip that you played a couple times, it tells you what he's doing. Do you mind going back to it? The one with the little.
The last one?
No, the one before that. It says ghost hand.
Yeah.
So watch this. So pause it here. Oh, it's hard to see. But he puts his right hand out.
He punches.
Right there.
Yeah, right there.
And he's trying to get the defensive end to sell with his hands and kind of come in early. And then it says ghost hand. That's what he's doing. And then he replants after the defensive end's extended. So you get the defensive end to kind of overextend. Then you can get into his chest.
Yep.
And that's what he does. That's not something high school tackles do.
He's been coached very well, obviously.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Yeah, you got to like this kid's tape. He moves well. He tends to know the game. This is a guy that I think could contribute relatively early for an offensive lineman.
Can I get excited about him? Because I want to be excited about him.
I think he likes Florida State. I mean, kind of we'll see if he makes a return trip, but I think they knocked it out of the park with that.
I trust you, Zach. If you tell me get a little bit excited, I'll get a little.
I'm
bit
all
excited,
but ensuring
right?
his commitment, right?
Huh?
I said I'm all but ensuring his commitment, right?
Yes. All right, we're going to move to the defensive line. Artavis Jones. I've got his film pulled up here. Do we want to watch this film? We're at 1 hour 20. I want to watch Booker Pickett's film. Tell me about Artavis Jones while I get Booker Pickett.
I think you do want to watch Artavis Jones' film. I think it's actually pretty fun. I'm sorry.
I want to.
Please.
I want to. All right, I will. Tell me about him, though.
Yeah, he's a local prospect out of Blountstown High School, not too far away from Tallahassee, obviously. And that's home to FSU's other 4-star defensive back commit, Jordan Pride. Their teammates. He's a guy that has bumped up the rankings tremendously. Was ranked 287th in the country before his recent bump to 146 overall, and now he's the number 19 defensive lineman in the nation.
Holy get off! Yeah, he's got great get off for such a big dude.
Lord.
It's really fun film. He also plays offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Rashard, what are you talking about, my man? Holy moly.
He's shouting out TMH, Tallahassee Memorial Health.
I don't even know what is going on with this guy. Appreciate you being here, though, brother. Appreciate you being here.
I was just saying I wanted to see this guy catch a route downfield. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Sign him up.
Now is that nose tackle
projected as a nose tackle for?
He reminds me.
Yeah.
Shoot, what was that big? Florida State was in for him, but then he went to Ole Miss.
The Taiwan Malone.
No. This was back in the Jimbo days.
Oh, I don't know.
He was just a stocky, pluggy nose tackle. He went to the NFL. Shoot, I can't think of his name.
How tall is this kid?
6'3". He's listed.
Really? Okay.
Listed.
Yeah, he's probably 6'2" or 6'3". I mean, I saw him in person. He's not.
Gotcha. I was about to say he doesn't look that tall, but if you're saying he's 6'2", 6'3", he's probably just playing decent comp, which makes this film even better.
Yeah, I mean, Blountstown doesn't play the best comp from what I understand. There's some big offensive linemen in North Florida.
How many touchdowns does this nose tackle have?
All right, sign him up just because I want to break down his film completely.
Yeah, this is fun.
All right, we can move on to Booker Pickett, but I think Artavis Jones is a pretty realistic defensive line target for Florida State, but he's being recruited by a bunch of other schools, including Miami and UCF. UCF is a school that has done a really good job with him.
Booker Pickett was here this weekend.
Yeah, this dude might be the most productive pass rusher at the high school level right now. He had 30 sacks last season. His dad played defensive line, Booker Pickett Sr. at Miami in the 90s, and was they're telling you in chat, it was DJ Jones.
Yes, DJ Jones. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah. So Pickett's dad played at Miami in the 90s. His uncle played at Ohio State as well. It was a first-round draft pick. And yeah, I mean, and he's got it in his bloodline. But this guy's pretty elite pass rusher.
But he liked Florida State, right? Supposedly.
Yeah, he said he wanted to grow up the villain of the household, and that was by rooting for FSU growing up. I think his mom actually attended Miami too. So yeah.
Oh, on, give me a break.
Yeah, this kid's elite. I mean, just like I said, I think he's had like 60 sacks over the last 2 years.
He's long,
ultra twitchy, just
super long, lean though.
Adam Fuller's the lead recruiter here because that's his area, the Tampa area. He goes to Wharton High School, Booker does. And yeah, I mean, FSU is going to chip away on this one. It's not going to be an easy one. Ohio State's done a really good job. Miami's done a good job. There's a bunch of other schools that are trying to get in the mix, but it was a really good sign that he did eventually make it up to campus this past weekend.
Yeah, he's got the kind of twitchiness that erases the read options. You see all these teams are trying to take him out by reading him, and he's just blowing them up right here.
Yeah, he's fast, he's quick, he's got a ton of length, change of direction. Good.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's some get off right there.
Yeah, he's definitely, if FSU could pick any pass rusher in this class, I think he'd be their number one pick.
As he should be.
Want to see him make it to campus a few more times before I really consider Florida State a true player, just because it's not like he's been a stranger. Like he was here last season for a game against Clemson. Not the best game to choose to come to out of all the home games, but yeah, he made it back this spring, which is an encouraging sign. And then FSU will likely try to get him back over the next few months again.
All right, we're going to keep it moving. Florida State just landed a commit in the linebacker position, but we had two on the honorable mention list, Peyton Pierce and Monte Whedon. Pierce was a guy that sounded like a lot of good news coming out of his visit when he showed up Legacy weekend.
Yeah.
But then now there's some buzz about Ohio State potentially, and does that seem to be trending away?
Yeah, I mean, it's just he's a linebacker recruit from the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Like Florida State just doesn't really recruit the state of Texas. Like they never have, like, extensively. I mean, they've done in the past for select recruits, but he's a guy that's visited FSU one time his entire recruitment. That's not usually the best sign. Although the Legacy weekend visit did go very well. I guess if he makes it back to campus, I'll consider him a guy that can maybe be on the top 10 list. I tried to put a linebacker on the list, but I was forming it a little actually before, Jaden Parish became a target for them. They offered him. And then guys like Monte Whedon has only made one visit as well. And Peyton Pierce is an out-of-state guy that was being recruited by a ton of top schools like Ohio State, like you mentioned. I don't know like the latest intel with his recruitment, but I did hear that Ohio State had some traction with him recently.
I like Monte Whedon's film. I think he's a ball player.
All right. Well, because I want to get to other film, and we are at an hour and 30. I'm sorry, Monte. We'll look at it another time.
Well, when he commits, we'll watch.
Yeah, and once he makes the top 10 list, we'll have to look at it.
There we go. But the guy I want to talk about, he is on campus right now. This is why everybody tuned in. All 130 people. This is why they're here. KJ Bolden, number 1 safety overall. He's a 5-star everywhere, superstar athlete, football player. What do we know about his visit right now? I know it's still early. He's kind of only been here for part of the day. And then again, can I get excited?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not selling any false hope over here, but But he's on campus, which is a great sign. I don't know if that was a thing I was confident was ever going to happen maybe 3 months ago, but since FSU made the switch at defensive backs coach with Marcus Woodson leaving and Patrick Surtain taking over, FSU got kind of a shot in the arm in this race. I think they really surged with Surtain. He's a guy that developed a quick relationship with Bolden and his family, and now that entire group is on campus at Florida State for a 2-day unofficial trip. They arrived around noon on Monday. We're recording this Monday night earlier today, and they were on campus pretty much all day, did photo shoots, all the usual visit stuff. And then, they'll continue to visit tomorrow morning on Tuesday. And then later in the day on Tuesday, obviously, is Florida State's 10th spring football practice, which KJ will get to watch. And I know that, he's excited to watch Pat Surtain kind of work with his guys and see if that's something that he wants to be a part of. I'm really interested to see his comments after the visit. I'm going to be camped out there after the practice to talk with KJ. I think it'll be, obviously really important. I kind of wrote about this or talked about it on the board, but that, FSU needs to lock in one of his 5 officials. That's the only way they really have a shot with KJ. And that's not going to be an easy task, right? This is a guy that grew up rooting for FSU, but he really hasn't been on campus at all over the past year and a half, really since I think 2021. Yeah. He has been courted by the top schools in the country for the last year. Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama have all been really, really heavily involved with him. I think Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson are pretty likely official visit destinations. And I think the other 2 are going to be up in the air. And I think that's where Florida State really needs to pounce. Arkansas is in the mix. Auburn's in the mix. And I think FSU is probably that 3rd school that really has a shot at trying to try to get him for an OV. That has to be the goal of this visit. I know FSU's rolling out the red carpet for him. He's the clear number 1 priority at the safety position right now for them, and just an absolutely elite prospect. I mean, you can see it on the film.
Yeah, he's playing for Buford, which is up in Atlanta. It's kind of weird actually seeing my alma mater on these films. This is about as good a competition as you'll see anywhere in the country, and he is a different level of athlete.
Yeah, he ran a 10.7 100-meter dash as a sophomore. So he's probably even faster now as a junior heading into his senior year. But he's a guy that, like you can see on film, goes both ways and is being projected as a safety, but could probably even be a blue chip prospect as a wide receiver as well.
He's special. I mean, there's not a lot of other ways to put it. So he's all right. So we're filming this Monday night. He's on campus Monday. He'll be back for practice and on campus Tuesday, and then he's leaving, correct? So it's a 2-day visit?
Yes. So I believe he told me he's leaving after the practice on Tuesday. So it should be a full 2-day trip to FSU.
All right. So check out Knowles 24/7 Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening when Zach will likely post. I would imagine this will be a video if KJ decides to give an interview, which I would think he probably does, but likely be video, article, all the goods, and then Zach gets to do his dirty digging to get the real intel on what's going on with that recruitment. We've got a couple of the names here: Jalais Solomon, Jamari Howard, Ricky Knight III, who was also just on campus. Seems like a priority. We've watched some of these guys film in the past. Mix of safeties, corners, kind of a lot going on here. Kevin, I'm gonna hope it's Levy.
Yeah,
that's how I would say it. You posted on Knowles 24/7 today that he seems to be a priority for Pat Surtain. What can you tell us about his recruitment while I pull up his film?
Yeah, so he's a guy that got offered actually recently since Surtain took over. I believe he got offered in February, and he's made 2 spring visits to Florida State. Was here for Legacy Weekend, but he was actually only here for that Saturday portion, so he didn't get to watch FSU practice on that Friday. So he really wanted to get back, and that was what this last weekend's visit was about, him getting to watch FSU's second scrimmage. Said he really liked that. Actually sat down with Surtain on the trip, and they broke down a ton of film from FSU's defense and just kind of broke down what kind of coverages they like to run. But this is a guy that's probably one of the fastest players in the entire country. I think he runs within the 10.6 range in the 100. I was told recently that Pat Surtain and FSU really like this kid. I think he's actually related to the Elams at UF. Okay. So there's some connection there. He's actually cousins with Ricky Knight. Like you mentioned before, the FSU
Mhm.
target, they're both out of that Palm Beach area, 5'6", and Ricky Knight's obviously at the Benjamin School, and Kevin Levy's at Cardinal Newman over there in West Palm Beach. So yeah, both talented prospects, but we're talking about Levy here, and he's a guy that has prototypical size. I think he's 6 foot, 170 something pounds, and then he runs absolute elites track times pretty consistently.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you see a lot more wide receiver tape here than DB tape. I can't say I've seen him challenge down the field at all as a defensive back.
Mhm.
We're going to start to get a sense of what Pat Surtain likes. We it's early in his recruiting life cycle, so we don't necessarily know what he likes. I'm sure Mike Norvell and Derek Ray have a concept of what they want at that position, and by what they want, I mean height, weight, speed, length, that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see what Surtain likes there, or what he values the most. I would love to see this kid covering some people down the field, but we haven't gotten a lot of that.
It was the same case with Bolden. It was just a lot of wide receiver tape.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier to get. If they know you're their best corner or safety, they're probably going to go away from you.
Here he's out running people.
Yeah, maybe he does one of those half and half kind of things.
Yeah, here's one here. I mean, you just see how much faster he is than this kid that he's competing against.
Yeah, he's just kind of toying with him.
Yeah. So obviously they value the heck out of that recovery speed and ability to turn and run.
I feel like they don't really have a ton of speedsters within their defensive backfield, which might be an important thing for them to value in this class.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, because I don't think that's, the two guys that are on campus currently from this last class, Quindarius Jones and KJ Kirkland, I wouldn't describe as necessarily speedsters. They're just guys that are lengthy and long. So maybe you get someone else. The speedy guys might be better, boundary corners or nickel guys, depending on what you want to do with them.
Yeah, and it's not like he lacks size either. He's full 6 foot, so a guy that will fare well at wherever you want to put him at, whether that's boundary corner or one of the corner spots or at nickel. I think he's a guy that FSU really values.
So an intriguing prospect with some Florida ties. We'll see where that one goes. We're an hour and 37 minutes in here, people. An hour and 37 minutes of just straight recruiting grind. I absolutely love it. My voice hurts a little bit right now, but I'm a junkie for this stuff. I know people are raging like crazy right now about the 0-star linebacker take and how dare they accept a commitment from that kid at this point. Look, these dudes have proven the hell out of themselves that they know what they're evaluating, and that when they take guys, it typically works out. So we'll see. I wouldn't overreact to anything right now. It is only April. It is April 3rd to be exact. Or if you're listening to this tomorrow, April 4th. There's a long ball game to go. I'm going to say it again. I said it earlier. Get your asses on Knowles 24/7. Get subbed. Get there. Do what needs to be done. Get on the Knowles 24/7 YouTube channel. Get on the X's and Knowles YouTube channel also. Get over there and get subbed. Make sure you got all the notifications turned on. Get on that On the Bench feed. Get those 5-star reviews in there and all that kind of crazy stuff. Make sure you've liked this video. For Zach Blostein, for Kevin Little, for myself, Coach AB, Adam Brown, we're going to call this a night.